podcasts. Imagine a single choice that changed everything, not just for two people, but for all of humanity. Today, we're diving deep into Genesis 3, exploring how one moment of deception reshaped human history.
And what's fascinating is that this isn't just a simple story of disobedience. It's a complex narrative about knowledge, free will, and the nature of truth itself.
Let's start with something that might surprise people, the serpent. It wasn't just any snake, was it?
No, and this is crucial to understand. The text specifically states that the serpent was more cunning than any other creature God had made.
Wait, so this wasn't just about being clever?
Exactly. The serpent represented the head of all prideful creatures that Adam and Eve were actually supposed to have dominion over.
So there's an irony there. They were meant to rule over these creatures, but instead,
they listened to one. And not just any creature, but one that had been taken over by Satan himself.
Let's talk about the conversation itself. The serpent's approach was interesting.
What's remarkable is how the serpent mixed truth with lies. It's a pattern we see throughout history. Deception works best when it's wrapped in partial truth.
And Eve added something to God's command, didn't she?
Yes, she said God told them not to touch the fruit, but that wasn't part of the original command. It's a fascinating example of how small distortions can lead to bigger problems.
That's such an important point about human nature. We tend to add our own interpretations to things.
And what's really interesting is that when the serpent was touching the fruit, it created a contradiction in Eve's mind. She saw it wasn't dying from touching it.
Oh, that's a detail I hadn't considered before. So it was like a visual demonstration that challenged her understanding?
Exactly. And here's where it gets deeper. The death God warned about wasn't meant to be instant physical death, but rather moral decay.
Can you explain that concept of moral decay a bit more?
According to the text, it was about a fundamental change in human nature. The moment they ate the fruit, their entire world changed. Their bodies, their relationship with God, everything.
And that's when they suddenly became aware they were naked, right?
Yes, but it's more than just physical nakedness. They lost their innocence, their transparency with God and each other. They began covering themselves with fig leaves, a symbol of pride.
That's fascinating. So the fig leaves weren't just about covering their bodies?
No, they represent something much deeper. According to the sources, they symbolize the arguments and excuses we make to cover our disobedience.
And this is still relevant today, isn't it?
Absolutely. The text tells us that people have been suing fig leaves ever since, making excuses and trying to cover their mistakes instead of facing them.
Let's talk about the consequences. God's response was pretty significant.
Yes, and what's interesting is that God's first response wasn't punishment. It was a question, where are you?
Why is that significant?
It shows God wasn't seeking information. He knew where they were. He was inviting them to acknowledge their situation, to face what they'd done.
And then we get to the curses.
Yes, but even within the curses, there's something remarkable. The first promise of redemption.
You're talking about the prophecy about the woman's seed?
Exactly. Notice it's the woman's seed, not Adam's, which is significant. This points to a future virgin birth, a unique conception.
That's a fascinating detail. What about the curse on the ground itself?
The curse on the ground was comprehensive. The text tells us that nature itself became confused, with thorns and thistles appearing where they hadn't before.
So the fall affected not just humanity, but the entire natural world?
Yes, and according to the sources, that first falling leaf caused great sorrow to those who feared God. They saw it as a sign of the curse, of nature's decay.
That's such a powerful image. Even a falling leaf carried meaning.
But here's something beautiful. Even in the curse, God left signs of his love. The flowers still had their fragrance, the colors remained.
So there was hope even in the midst of judgment?
Exactly. And this brings us to perhaps the most surprising part. Their expulsion from Eden was actually an act of mercy.
Wait, how was that merciful?
Because if they had eaten from the tree of life in their fallen state, they would have immortalized their sinful condition. God prevented that possibility.
That's a perspective I hadn't considered before.
And here's something else fascinating. Adam's fall was actually inexplicable from a logical standpoint.
What do you mean by that?
Well, according to the sources, Adam was created perfect, with no corrupt principles or tendencies toward evil. His fall can't be explained by any internal flaw.
So it really was a pure choice?
Yes, and that's crucial. God could have prevented it, but that would have made Adam a mere machine instead of a free moral agent.
Let's talk about the immediate aftermath. How did God respond to their fall?
This is remarkable. The instant man sinned, Christ stepped forward as a substitute. The plan of salvation was immediate.
So there wasn't even a moment when humanity was without hope?
Not one moment. As the text says, as soon as there was sin, there was a savior.
That's powerful. And what about the long-term effects we're still seeing today?
The sources tell us there's been a succession of falls, each greater than the last. Disease, decay, and moral corruption have increased over time.
But there's still hope, right?
Absolutely. The promise given in Eden still stands, the ultimate victory over evil and the restoration of what was lost.
So, in a way, this ancient story is still unfolding?
Yes, and we're all part of it. The same choice between truth and deception, between pride and humility, faces each of us.
That really brings it home. This isn't just ancient history, is it?
No, it's the story of human nature itself. The same patterns, the same choices, the same consequences, and the same hope for redemption.
And that hope is really what makes this story so powerful, isn't it?
Exactly. Even in humanity's darkest moment, there was a plan for restoration. That's the ultimate message of Genesis 3.
What a journey this has been, from deception to hope, from fall to promised restoration.
And perhaps that's why this story has endured, because it speaks to something fundamental about who we are and who we can become.
Thank you for joining us on Copilot Podcasts. Remember, every choice matters, and hope always remains.